ekakiyama nahi paya prana harina. Tumi kripa kori shraddha bindu diya deho Krishna namadane. Tumi kripa kori shraddha bindu diya deho Krishna namadane. Krishna se Toma, Krishna dite paro, Tomara Shakatiyache. Krishna se Toma, Krishna dite paro. Amito Kanka, Krishna Krishna Boli, Jai Tava Pache Pache. Amito Kangala, Krishna Krishna Bodhidaya. Oh He Vaishnava Apradha, Oya Sakara, Hidasi Koruna Kori. Oh He Vaishnava Apradha, so there's quite a number of bhajans from Bhaktivinoda Thakur and others are setting the mood for how to associate with devotees, what kind of mood we should have. And sometimes the introspective mood, where we feel unqualified for associating devotees. So sometimes we might think that, out of humility, we might think, oh, I'm not qualified to be in association with devotees. But we shouldn't become so deflated that we give up the association with devotees. So that might be there, but don't let it become something which takes us away from that. So this topic of Vaisnava Apradha, what is Vaisnava Apradha? What's the causes of it? What types of Vaisnava Apradha can there be? And how can we avoid it? And how can we rectify it? Because it's unlikely that we will just come out of the material world, come into association with devotees and not make any mistakes. So we shouldn't become so hard on ourselves. So it might sound a bit heavy, but okay, so in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha, we should become free from attachment, fear, and anger. So to become fearless, like Srila Prabhupada says, Nabhaichara Naravindam. But what is it that the devotees should fear? On the subject of today, top of the class. We should be afraid to do that because it's actually very destructive. Even for selfish purposes, we should be afraid to do that because I'll find out in a few minutes then the effects of that. But also, even if we do make some offence, then there's also a way to rectify. And it's quite simple. So we have a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. We can, which one did I give you? 5, 10, 17? Okay, I don't have the Sanskrit here, so can someone read the Sanskrit out? Is that about right? Okay, and hopefully it's the same verse here. Yep. My dear sir, I'm not at all afraid of the thunderbolt of King Indra. The thunderbolt of King Indra, you ever been out in the lightning? It's quite frightening. One time we were in New Vrudja Dam, and there was some kind of festival was going on. It was just as the temple was being built, and in the valley they had, Shiva Maharaj had erected a big tent, and there was a toilet block, and there was a camp, literally tents everywhere. And the rain came down. It was a nice sunny day, but then the rain came down, torrential rain. It was being flooded. The devotees were having to abandon their tents. And we were living in a motorhome at the time. We travelled there to do some festivals. And the thunder and lightning was coming like anything. I was thinking, I just feel like I'm going to get struck by lightning at any moment. You felt really padum, yad v, padum, danger at every step. You think, well, the next step will I get hit, because it was just coming one after another. And just as I put my hand on the motor home to the handle to get in, and it hit the motorhome, and I felt it must have earthed through the motorhome onto the ground, but I felt a little tinge of it. I thought, well, this could be it shows you how much you have to depend on Krishna. And you feel very vulnerable. So this material world is like that. We're very vulnerable. But if Krishna wants to save us, then who can harm us? But I was very acutely aware that at any moment the lightning hits you, and you just be like distant memory. You just be gone, immediately turn to dust or something. I'm not afraid of the serpentine piercing trident of Lord Shiva. Now, Lord Shiva, he is capable of destroying the material world. So a devotee is praying like this. I do not care about the punishment of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, nor am I afraid of fire, scorching sun, moon, wind, nor the weapons of Kuvera. Yet I am afraid of offending a Brahmin. I am very much afraid of this. So in the purport, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was instructing Rupa Goswami at the Dasashramani Dagat in Prayag, he pointed out very clearly the seriousness of offending Vaishnava. He compared the Vaishnava Apradha to Hati Mata, a mad elephant. When a mad elephant enters a garden, it spoils all the fruits and flowers. Anyone ever seen a mad elephant in India or on YouTube? You see how powerful and destructive they are. And these elephants, they used to build huge, big temples. They're very strong. They never had tanks in those days. They had elephants. And they're vegetarian as well. So the myth of to eat meat to be big and strong. But if an elephant gets into your garden, spend so much time developing a nice garden, just like here. You know, Ishan and some of the devotees, they put a lot of work into the garden. But if somehow or another, an elephant, which you're not likely to see in Les Mexico, and it's into the garden, then it will destroy it in no time. So this mad elephant offence is like throwing all caught the wind, and we enter into saying or acting in such a way which is very wrong. And why is it so offensive? So what is the elephant offence, and what is the garden which is being destroyed? When a mad elephant enters a garden, it spoils all the fruits and flowers. Similarly, if one offends a Vaishnava, he spoils all his spiritual assets. Offending a Brahmin is very dangerous, and this was known to Maharaj Rahugana. He therefore frequently admitted his fault. There are many dangerous things, thunderbolt, fire, Yamaraj's punishment, the punishment of the Lord Shiva's trident, and so forth, but none is considered as serious as offending a Brahmin like Jad Bharat. Therefore, Maharaj Rahugana immediately descended from his palanquin and fell flat before the lotus feet of the Brahmin Jad Bharat, just to be excused. So here we have a situation where Maharaj Rahugana had not recognized Jad Bharat for being there's so many aspects of this Vaisnava Apradha subject contained within this one verse. He didn't recognize Jad Bharat as being a great soul, but then as soon as he did, then because Maharaj Rahugana was also a great soul, Then he got immediately off of his chariot, and he paid his obeisances to Jad Bharat. So this is showing us also the remedy. If we commit some offence, sometimes we do it because we have, residual character from the past, and sometimes we see a devotee as an ordinary person, and we just treat them like that, or we don't consider them properly. And as soon as we realise we've done that, then we have to make apology, we pay our obeisances. Therefore, when we're doing this Trinadapi every morning, and we're doing this Vancha Kalpa, the Vaisnava Pranams, then we should be doing it purposefully, that, if I've offended some devotee, or if you should think like that. And better than that, of course, is not just to do it kind of generally, but to go to the devotee directly, and we can offer obeisances. And this way, the devotee will kindly forgive us. So this word aparadha, so can anyone say what it means? We spoke about it recently. So what's the word radha? Radhananam sarvesham. Radha, yeah. Radhananam means worship. So we have sampradaya and we have apasampradaya. So what does aparadha mean?
Is it rather like satisfaction in anything which is done, which causes dissatisfaction to the Lord or devotees is aparadha?
Yeah, so it's opposite of worship. It means to act in such a way which is displeasing to the Lord. Or in others, we just, for English purposes, we just say offence, to commit some offence. So that we're just hearing here that we should be very much afraid of getting Vaisnava Apradha, because to make progress in devotional service requires a lot of effort, doesn't it? How much effort have we made to get this far in our life? All the things we were doing before we're leaving behind, taking on a new life, that takes a lot of effort. And still, there's a lot of effort to be made before we're completely cleansed of all the anarthas. And while we're doing this, we're creating a nice garden. That garden has many different aspects to it, like association with devotees, or cultivating that, or service attitude, or japa, things like this. But if we let the mad elephant in, then all these things can be destroyed. And so what is the result of that? We can lose taste, we lose enthusiasm, and then material desires come up, stuff like that. So it's good to know, it might get a bit heavy to begin with. That's only because devotees are humble and they see themselves in these categories sometimes. But as we say, don't become too introspective where you become demotivated. So just give me a second, I'll find some quote. Okay, Srila Prabhupada translated Srila Rupa Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or Nectar of Devotion, in which this sense is to be avoided. So sometimes, in Kali Yuga, we have very memory, isn't it? So even to remember these offences is probably going to be a bit beyond us. If the Vaisnava Apradha is the enemy, then we need to know the enemy, don't we? If you're fighting an enemy in the dark, you don't know it. Or if it's an enemy there and you can't see them. So they have to be able to recognise the enemy. So at least we should try to understand some of these and see where they fit in our life and make some changes. The first 32 offences are mentioned in the Agama Shastra and the Varaha Purana. I'm not going to list them all, so you don't need to get your pen and paper out, but you can, in your own time, you can try to see these in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Offences against the deities, such as like falling asleep in front of the deities, sitting with your feet pointing towards the deities, yawning, chastising another, so many different offences. So we try to learn these, and as we learn them, they become good habits. In the Varaha Purana, Lord Varaha describes 32 additional offences the Vaishnavas should avoid with care. So how are we supposed to remember 64 offences? But they can be, if we have the right mood, then we will automatically start to become aware of these. So avoid them with great care. In addition to these, there are other prohibitions that devotees should avoid. Avoiding these offences pleases Supreme Lord Sri Krishna because of our conditioning. We are prone to commit offences while engaging in devotional service. So the purpose of avoiding these offences is to please Krishna. That's why we're doing it. We're not just learning a bunch of rules and regulations so we can say I'm following all the rules and criticising others for not following them and make offences. Ironic that is. So because Krishna is very dear to the devotees and the devotees are very dear to Krishna, then if we're trying to develop love of Krishna, then we certainly don't want to commit offences against those who are very dear to Krishna. And those who are very dear, we read that every morning also in the 10 offences. So there's number 1 and number 3, right? What's number 1 offence against the holy name? Yeah, to blaspheme the dyslexic devotees. To blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagation of the Lord's holy name throughout the world. So we have to look and see, devotees are very rare. Even Prabhupada says the worst devotee is better than the best non-devotee, because at least that devotee will remind you of Krishna, whereas a non-devotee won't. And they're trying to, and who knows, that devotee may become a guru. Just like we've seen a couple of gurus yesterday on the TV, but at one time they were also new devotees. Of course, we don't look at their past life and think in terms of they were spaced out back to one day. We don't know that. Some of these devotees are here because they are Lord Chaitanya's people. They're directly. I think Srila Prabhupada said of Jaipatak Maharaj said he's one of Lord Chaitanya's men. And we can see the same as so many other devotees. They're not ordinary people. They can't come to, in this one life, through so much amazing service and just simply coming from a conditioned background. And this will come to in a little minute as well. So to become free from the effects of these offences, Lord Chaitanya recommended chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That's the first part of it, and the other one is and avoiding further offences. So it's not that just simply, we'll just chant Hare Krishna and it'll all go away. We have to avoid. So avoid means we have to recognise we may have done some offence, we clear that up, chant the holy name, and then we avoid. So, of course, in Kali Yuga, because our memory is poor, then sometimes we may do the same thing time and time again, but we should come to the point where we've exhausted our own patience with our own faults, rather than finding the faults with others. We better to turn that towards ourselves. Like they say, when there's one finger pointing at somebody, there's 3 pointing at you. Or was it Jesus Christ said, take the log out of your own eye before you take the splinter out of someone else's? We have more in ourselves. Why we think we've got time to rectify everyone else? We've got so much time. We've got so little time and so much to do. Clearing up our own garden. We should make a conscious effort to avoid offences while engaged in devotional service. So this is a very important point, a conscious effort. It's just not by osmosis that it'll all just fall into place. We have to make a conscious effort. So that means we need to learn what we should do and what we shouldn't do. We'll come to this in a bit as well. It is not that we may continue to commit offences and expect that simply by chanting Hare Krishna the effects will be nullified. This is compared to an elephant who bathes and then again throws dust on his body after his bath. Elephants are getting a bit of glorification today. So we all know the story of the elephant taking a bath. This is actually how they do it. They go into the water, and then after they clean, I think they feel a bit naked, so they start rolling in the dirt again, just so they feel properly dressed. And that's like us as well. Sometimes when we get purified, we feel a bit vulnerable, and that's actually not a bad thing because we are vulnerable, but we take shelter. And then because we have this kind of false sense of security by holding on to our attachments and sinful activities, then we find some kind of place to hide in that. But actually, that sense of vulnerability is good for taking shelter in Krishna. And then we will feel security and nothing can hurt us. Other recommendations to eradicate effects of offences include residing in a place such as Vrindavan, Mayapur, Krishnabavan, etc., and engaging in emotional service there. It is also recommended to read Bhagavad Gita every day and worship Shalagram, Shila, and Tulsi. So we're doing this today, reading Bhagavad Gita, reading Srimad Bhagavatam. All that is inauspicious within the heart by regular recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, then these things are gradually destroyed to zero. So in Shalagram, as we're here chanting for the deities, that's also worshipping, not that it's simply I can worship until I get Brahman or until I'm allowed on the altar. Whatever service we're doing, all the worship here is going through Sri Tulsi Nath. And we're also very much benefited because Gaurnitai are the most merciful incarnations. They don't see offence. That doesn't mean to say, great, we don't have to change. Let's just keep the offences going and they don't see them. They don't see offence because they want to make advancement. But also Lord Chaitanya says, try to see the good in us. This is how to counteract also the negative side of it. So worshipping Shalagram, worshipping Tulsi Devi, reading by that will eradicate offences. Read a chapter a day, chapter a day. Then our heart becomes cleansed. And those who do that, they actually experience that. If one offends Vaishnava, Bhaktivinoda Thakur recommends that one should beg for the mercy of the Vaishnava. So the very person which we offend, then we should go to that person and specifically state what we did wrong, and specifically that person, not go to someone else, not to make some kind of vague general apology with conditions throwing in there. It should be unconditional. If we want unconditional forgiveness, then unconditional remorse must be there. And Prabhupada mentioned that in the first canto, that all sins unwillingly committed by devotee are burnt up in the fire of repentance. One can nullify Vaishnava Apradha by repenting bitterly and falling at the feet of the offended devotee. One should sincerely beg forgiveness with tears in the eyes and regret in the heart. And of course, we have to do that in reality, not that we just make a big dramatic show of it, making sure that there's enough people watching us, that we put in a good act. We have to really feel that in our heart that we made some mistake and want to rectify it. Not simply just because for ourselves, but because we recognize that we've failed to show the proper etiquette. One should then declare himself a fallen wretch in need of the Vaishnava's mercy. The kind of Vaishnava will surely absolve the offence. So when Chagai and Madai were up to no good, then fact, Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, being the well-wishers of everybody, they were going around trying to incite people to chant the holy names so that they could be delivered from the clutches of Maya. And when they came to Jagat Madai's residence, they were chased away. And then Lord Nityananda says, we have to go back and deliver these two because these are the worst sinners in Kali Yuga. If we cannot deliver these guys, then how can Lord Chaitanya be called Patita Pavana, Saviour of the most fallen? So we have to glorify Lord Chaitanya by saving these two. And Haridas Thakur was saying, no, can I get a new Sankirtan partner? I don't want to go out with this guy. He's too much. And Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, his thing was when people would come to the door, he would beg them to chant the holy name of the Lord, and if they didn't, then he'd fall at their feet. If they shut the door on him, he'd go through, around the side of the building, jump in the window. He wouldn't give up very easily. Because he was deeply compassionate. He really cared. And so on the second visit to Jagat Madai, then Madai picked up an earthen pot and struck Lord Nityananda in the head. And this is a very grave offence we'll come to this instinct also, to kill or harm a Vaishnava. This was his intention. He was accustomed to killing this mad guy. And actually, their names was Jagannath and Madhava. They were previously Brahmins, but they had become fallen, and they were just breaking every rule in the book, literally looking up the book to see what rules they could break. Oh, we haven't done that one. Let's do that one today. This is what they're doing. And this is, and we won't go into what they were doing because it's we think, wow, how could such degraded people ever be saved? What they were doing was just horrendous. But by the mercy of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, they were redeemed. So Lord Chaitanya heard about this and immediately appeared on the scene. He'd made a promise not to take up any weapons in Kali Yuga. His weapons would simply be the holy names. So Kartal's Mridanga, that was going to be his weapons. And defeating the demonic mentality with argument, not with the sword or bow and arrow or chakra. But when he arrived on the scene, immediately he surveyed what had happened, and he summoned Sudarshan Chakra, and he was just going to take off the head of Madai. And the Lord Nityananda said, "Oh, you promised to use any weapons," but Lord Chaitanya wasn't having it because he's back to Vatsala. He's a protector of his devotees. So he didn't like to see, as soon as the Lord see that Lord Nityananda was being offended, and Lord Chaitanya, the most merciful incarnation, was furious. He didn't like that at all. And even the devotees were begging him, don't do it. And they weren't getting anywhere. The Lord had decided. Then Lord Nityananda says, well, if you have to punish them, at least you can't punish Jagai because he saved me. Then immediately Lord Chaitanya's mood changed and he says, oh, he saved you. Tell me more. He hit me a second time, and Jagai stopped him. And then the Lord immediately embraced him. And then Madai, he also begged, and he says, oh, Kripa Kori, be merciful to me. And your case is not so simple. So he didn't let him, Lord Chaitanya easily forgiven him, but he didn't want him to think like offence. So therefore, he had to do a bit of begging. And then they said, okay, you can take shelter of the one who you offended. And Lord Nityananda told him, okay, build a bathing ghat, Madai Ghat. Has anyone ever visited Madai Ghat? It's there. So he built a bathing ghat where all the pilgrims would come, and they'd be able to take bath in the Ganges, it would be, is it? And he resided there and served the pilgrims. It was interesting because he was truly remorseful, so much so that sometimes the pilgrims, when they arrived there, they seen him and they were thinking, well, he's looking like a Vaishnava now, but what if he changes his mind, So they would just keep a distance from him, and they're a bit kind of careful not to accept any service from him. And then sometimes people were so disgusted they would throw things at him, strike him on the head with stones. And it was described that Madai felt this as blissful because he was so mortified by his offence that he was thinking, this is nothing, I should be punished much more. So, of course, this is showing us extreme level of humility in relation to level of offence as well. But it's showing you the mood that we shouldn't try to justify, and we shouldn't go back. If we make some repentance, then we shouldn't go back and say, well, I said sorry last week, but I feel different about that now. So there's some types of offences. We'll just list them just so you know. We'll not go through the whole 64. We'll just go into the category of 6. If I could find that. Oh, and there's examples throughout the whole Shastra of even eternally liberated souls apparently committing offences, and these devotees take part in those pastimes to show us this is the path, this can happen inadvertently or purposefully. We can do these things. Maybe we get a bit emotional, we do something, and we have to rectify it. Otherwise, the Bhakti-lata beach is trampled on and then it dries up. So just a second. So back to Chumaraj says, so there are 6 offences. He's categorized 4 of them here. So 4 kinds of blasphemy to a Vaishnava. To find fault with a Vaishnava for their apparent low birth. So if a devotee thinks, I'm of a particular caste and you're a lower caste, then this is it on the mundane platform. It's not the way Krishna sees it. And it's making a mundane estimation of a devotee. And the second one is to blaspheme a devotee for his previous faults. So just because we did something in our previous life, as in life before becoming a devotee, that shouldn't be considered, well, you were such and such before you joined, and then we look down upon them. They're not at fault, we're at fault if we do that. Every sinner has a future and every saint had a past. Right. So we shouldn't think that we are holier than thou. Such a holier than attitude is attractive, and it's the basis of offences. It's pride. To blaspheme a devotee for accidental fault. So because we have some conditioning, then we start to make some fault. So, and we're also affected by the 4 defects, like we were discussing yesterday: imperfect senses, tendency to cheat, illusion, and commit mistakes. So if we have a tendency to commit mistakes, Krishna says every endeavour is covered by some fault, then why are we expecting that in the material world? It's the intention behind what we're doing, isn't it? If the intention is right. But if someone who has got the authority to point out that what we're doing is wrong, they're not the offender for doing that, that's their service. Or if it's their duty to train someone up and they have to say, okay, your mood is not right, what you're doing externally might be okay, but your mood is wrong, it's developing pride, that's going to be a problem for you. So it's not that we all just assume that role. Prabhupada once instructed one of his disciples who was fault-finding with another devotee. He says, why do you want to take part in this nasty business? This is what the spiritual master has to do. This is a nasty business. So we have to be able to do that without getting dirty, just like we have to not become caught up in that person's mistakes and differentiate between the sin and the sinner, so to speak. So we don't see the devotee because that they are the fault. We just see, okay, that is something there. But these, and then also to blaspheme for the faults that are almost rectified. So we're in the process of clearing. 3 stages of chanting. First is offensive, then clearing, and then the pure stage. So as soon as we engage in this process of Krishna consciousness, devotional service, then we're starting to clear things out of the way. We're becoming aware of our faults, anartha nivritti, giving up the unwanted things. And then sometimes in the endeavour to do that, we might still do a mistake, but we shouldn't think, oh, that person's a goner, now they're finished. There's room for improvement. There's this, I can't remember the Sanskrit, but there's just as the ground is the resting place for one whose feet have slipped, then if we commit some offence against the Lord or the Lord's devotee, then we take shelter in that person. So if you slip on the ground and then you're going to blame the ground and think, that's it, I'm not walking on you again, I'm just going to lie here. Because I've said the tripping and slipping business. Just that's it, I'm just going to roll about, slide about the place. No, we have to back up again. If that was the case, then none of us would have learned to walk. It's like all your parents have got children, you see them tripping and slipping and falling over. And it's just as well that, the bones of babies are made quite rubbery. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of broken bones. And then sometimes they fall and they bang their head off of things. But then immediately they want to get up and try again, don't they? And the parents encourage them, try again. Come on, come to me. And the parents see the child's walking from mum to dad. And then finally they stand on their own 2 feet. So this is a situation that sometimes we slip. The devotees are encouraging us, okay, you've slipped, that's your fault, be aware of it, try not to do it again, but carry on, get back up again. So the 6th end of Vaisnava Apradha, these are tuned as I won't read this Sanskrit because it's too long. Defamation of the saints as violence and so forth, as well as verbal, is now presented. Blasphemy. Give me a sec. The fools who defame Vaishnava Mahatmas fall into a place known as Maharorava, along with their ancestors. The 6 degrading acts against Vaishnavas are killing him, blaspheming him, being envious of or hating him, not glorifying him, being angry at him, and not being happy upon seeing him. According to Jiva Goswami, it is also not acceptable to witness one or several among the aforementioned degrading acts of defamation. So if we hear blasphemy against a devotee, then according to Nectar of Devotion, what are the courses of action we should take? We should run away. There's other things mentioned as well, but they wouldn't be compliant with the laws of the land. Or you should go and jump into the Ganges, right? You cover your ears. At one time I was in Glasgow distributing books, and these senior Indian men came to me and started criticising Krishna. And I thought, you guys should know better. So I tried very briefly to put them right, but they weren't having it. So I went over my ear and I just started chanting or singing bananas, and then they just went. And then I felt protected because, I don't care what the people think around about me. It's like you have to protect yourself. Don't stand there like if it's listening to Krishna being blasphemed. And immediately I felt uplifted. Didn't have any effect. So this is the thing, we have to protect ourselves from hearing offences against the Lord, against devotees. There's maybe a little bit to grab it. So there's quite heavy reactions for this. I won't go into them. But just understand that it's not seen lightly by the Lord. So those 6 offences: to kill Vaishnava, this is obviously a heinous act bound to destroy the keeper of devotion. Under this heading, any and all acts of physical violence are also included. So it's very pitiful if someone assaults a devotee. One devotee got assaulted. I came back from Sanktan. Senior devotees said to him, "So did you report the person to the police?" And they said, "No, I thought just, accept it as my karma and forgive him." He says, "No, you should have reported him because he will suffer greatly for this. And if you had reported him to the police, he would have been dealt with and his punishment would be less." So once also I was assaulted on the street, and the devotee who was with me, he hadn't joined the temple, he was very new. And so when I got up off the ground and these guys had left, then he said, "No, are you okay?" I said, "It's just my karma." And he said, "Oh, okay." But when the senior devotees arrived on the scene to pick us up, to take us back to where we were living, and they heard what had happened, they wanted to go find the guy and teach him a lesson because they were angry about it. So this is the things that we may tolerate offences to ourselves, but not to others. So to blaspheme, all verbal acts of defamation come under this category: calling a Vaishnava names, speaking harsh to him or about him, speaking lies of him, and so forth are considered blasphemy. Number 3, to be envious or hateful, to be envious of a Vaishnava, to wish for his demise or suffering, and to act towards this goal and other thoughts, speech and deeds prompted by a feeling of malice towards a Vaishnava come under this heading. To not glorify all Vaishnavas are worthy of respect, to not respect the Vaishnava in accordance with his qualification, or to a different opinion from ours. The Prabhupada says that even within the devotees there can be difference of opinion, but there shouldn't be contention. He summarises that very concisely. So there may be differences of opinion, but it shouldn't be contention, and that certainly shouldn't be elevated to court cases and things like that. These kind of things go on. Whatever a Vaishnava does, we are not to display an outburst of anger towards him. It is permitted to display anger towards someone who is hateful towards the bhaktas, but this too is to be done in a civil, constructive way for the rectification of the wrongdoer. 6, to not be happy upon seeing whoever has accepted the holy names of Krishna as a blessing to the world. Do not feel happiness upon meeting a soul who has chosen to approach the Lord regardless of his defects is inappropriate. So if you were to be stuck on a desert island with somebody, who would you rather be stuck on? With some mundane person, rich and famous, or a devotee? No, somebody mundane, rich and famous, because they come looking for them and you get rescued. Yeah, Vaishnava Association. So we have to see the service that people are doing. There's like, there was one devotee, Vishnu Smaranam from Scotland, who's a really intelligent guy, but he's quite rough, and sometimes it was hard to see how good a devotee was because of his rough conditioning. But you could see it at times because although he had a tendency to fall into some of his past ways, when he got into devotional service, he was very ekeha, very single-pointed. And when he'd come to the temple, his uniform was a bin bag, and he'd go into the manor kitchen, and he'd wash the pots all day. And washing all the pots by yourself after the Sunday feast at the manor is a big, big task. It's many, many hours in there. And he'd be in there. And then sometimes he'd go in Sanktan, but he had the weakness for the booze. And when he had the booze, he had a weakness for assaulting Her Majesty's Yadutas, the police, and he'd end up in prison. He'd been in Lord Chaitanya program at every town and village. He was doing every prison in the country. Quite a number of times we meet people on the street who'd met him in prison and who got them chanting for Kadashi. So when he was in prison, then he was actually following strictly. There was no temptation there, and he was a great devotee. chanting 64 rounds. I remember meeting one ex-convict who he got chanting 64 rounds and following the carriage strictly, staying up all night chanting. But if somebody looked to him just on the surface and see some of the rough things that he did, they would think, oh, they maybe look down on him, but he was doing terrific preaching, bring people to Krishna. So he would be very dear to Krishna, no doubt. So we should make things like that. And perhaps just because we were Scottish, we know the condition of Scottish people, we're always quite happy to see them. So we mentioned some types of Vaisnava Apradha. So this third offence against the holy name is to disobey the order of the spiritual master. So this is considered to be the worst offence. You know, the spiritual master is your well-wisher. To disobey the instruction of the spiritual master, then that should be avoided as much as possible. And sometimes even the spiritual master won't instruct a disciple. Why would that be? If there's some instruction to be given to a disciple and the spiritual master can see it, but he won't give the instruction.
Is it because
Somebody? Disciple's not ready for it yet. And what would you say? Because if the disciple is given that instruction, they don't follow that instruction, it becomes an offence. So the spiritual master will think they're not ready to hear this. They need to hear it, but they're not ready for it. So I have to wait. I have to remain silent. So we shouldn't think just because the spiritual master is seeing his acting, he's not saying anything, that he's not seeing it. We should be thinking, I'm such a rascal, but he's so kind, he won't even say anything to me because he's afraid that I won't follow it, and he doesn't want me to commit any further offence. So this is a consideration of the spiritual master. But we shouldn't hold him to ransom in this way. We should be thinking, okay, I have to be more sincere. I have to be ready to take that instruction, because with the instruction comes the ability to follow it. He gives the potency that we can do that which is beyond what we think we can do. And if you look at the life of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, you can see from the word go, those devotees were doing amazing things because they put their faith in the spiritual master, and Krishna was able to act through them. They weren't placing limitations on the spiritual master. So blasphemy devotees, we just covered that, and we covered also results of it. So we could actually go on about this all day, but I'll just kind of briefly go over a few points then. So we talked about different types of offences, the mad elephant offence. So this time when Sachimata, the mother of Lord Chaitanya, she blamed, who was it she blamed for Lord Chaitanya taking sannyas? She was so attached to Lord Chaitanya when she heard he was taking sannyas, and she was so distraught, then she was blaming somebody. Who was that? Yeah. And why did she blame him? This verse, Yadi Vaishnava Apradha Uti Hatimata Upadi Vachinditara Shuki Yayapata. As a mad elephant may trample all the plants in the garden, so by committing one offence at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, one may spoil all the devotional service he has accumulated in his life. So that's why we take it seriously. Lord Chaitanya induced his mother to take the dust of Advaita Acharya's lotus feet, and thus her Vaishnava Apradha was nullified. So the offence was that he was blaming Lord Advaita Acharya. So let's see the pastimes here. So Lord Chaitanya had a brother, didn't he? Who was his brother? Vishwarup. So he took sannyas. Sachimata thought that Advaita Acharya had persuaded him to do so. Therefore, she accused. So this was the offence that she accused Advaita Acharya of convincing Vishwarup to take sannyas. And Lord Chaitanya induced his mother to take the dust of Advaita Acharya's lotus feet. So it was Lord Chaitanya's brother who took sannyas. So by taking the dust of his lotus feet, or by submitting oneself, apologising, then we rectify that offence immediately, then that is uplifted. So these of offences, having a materialistic vision, seeing a devotee as an ordinary person, and just as the Ganges is full of bubbles, foam and mud, we get this from the Nectar of Instruction, isn't it? Which verse is it? Is it 7? Again, 6. So even though the Ganges may have bubbles, foam and mud, then one doesn't hesitate to just brush aside the foam. Generally, foam and water is considered contamination in the water, but we don't consider the Ganges contaminated, regardless of whatever contaminations may apparently be in there. So we see them as separate. Ganges is always pure. So a devotee is a devotee because chanting, so they're considered pure. There may be some external, what do you call it, impurities, but we don't consider them as being important. So unless we have a fault-finding mentality, if we have a fault-finding mentality, what happens is we find the faults, and then we've accumulated all the faults ourselves. We're finding them all, isn't it? So we become the biggest fault. The fault-finding mentality is a bigger fault than the faults we're finding. So Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, entitled Divine and Demoniac Natures. We don't like to see ourselves in the category of demoniac, do we? We prefer to see ourselves in the category of divine. But it's good introspection to see where these unsavory characteristics are also present in us, because then we can identify and deal with it. So in verse 4, pride, arrogance, conceit, these things are listed. So it seems like they're almost the same thing. We're thinking, why is Krishna saying this? It just sounds like the same word 3 times. But there's a difference between them. So pride is described as having overestimation of ourselves, exceedingly high self-regard. Arrogance, according to the dictionary, is exaggerated self-importance. And conceit is excessive self-admiration, vanity, narcissism. So, of course, all these things rolled into one big ball then become offensive because we think we're above others, we look down upon others. And so this is the wrong mentality of devotee. But if we're aware of these things in ourselves, then we can deal with it. Also, causes of Vaisnava Apradha is ignorant. We're aware that sometimes our material qualities are at play. So we have to know what is to be done and what is not to be done. So in the 16th chapter, verse 7, also pravritim cha nivritim cha, the demoniac do not know what is to be done and what to be done. So we should purposefully learn about what is to be done and what is not to be done, so that we don't fall under the traps of Maya. And regarding the causes of Vaisnava Apradha, see if you can find Bhagavatam 5:10-24. If you could put that up. Do you have it there? Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah. So this is following on the conversation between King Rahugana and Jad Bharat. What you have spoken appears to me to be contradictory. O best friend of the distressed, I have committed a great offence by insulting you. I was puffed up with false prestige due to possessing the body of a king. For this I have certainly become an offender. Therefore I pray that you kindly glance at me with your causeless mercy. If you do so, I can be relieved from sinful activities brought about by insulting you. So there's a few nice lessons in there. So he was, because of his pride, puffed up with false prestige, considering his material position higher than someone else's, then he thought someone was lower, didn't recognise him, and committed an offence by insulting him. And as a result of that offence, he was asking for forgiveness. Then I can be relieved from sinful activities brought about by insulting you. So this leads us to the next thing, which is the results of Vaisnava Apradha. Or can anyone mention any? What's the lovely fruits of Vaisnava Apradha? Losing taste, yeah. If we lose taste for and something else on the account of Vaisnava Apradha. He was just saying here in the very end, I can be relieved from, yeah, so material desires arise. So if we're practicing, if we're chatting all around and we're following everything, but we're struggling with material desires, then it may well be that we have committed some offence. We should consider, have offended somebody, and then try to search that person out. And then, as Maharaj Rahugana is saying here, that he would be relieved from the sinful activities brought about by material desire. And material desire means that we have the mad elephant offence has destroyed our battle at the beach. But once again, if we get forgiveness, then immediately they were reinstated. So there's the 4 R's. Does anyone remember what the 4 R's are? I don't mean 4 farmers, Cornish farmers, pirates.
May not be orderly, but is it one repent?
That's, or repent or remorse. Yeah.
Right.
Recognition, yeah. If we recognise we did something wrong, then we can repent, have some remorse for it, and then path of
Rectification.
and then finally
Reinstatement.
yeah, exactly. Very good, thank you. So if we just want to go to reinstatement without recognizing or feeling the remorse or any path of rectification, then we're not very sincere, is it? The path of rectification, then the authority may say, okay, the mind has become reinstated again because they see that they're sincerely. And so quickly they become righteous, and this is what Krishna is saying as well. Even if they commit some abominable activity because they're rightly situated. So rightly situated means they were protected by given a path of rectification, they were protected by the instructions of Guru or Vaishnavas, and then quickly we become reinstated. Sometimes it seems like if you do something wrong, it seems like the whole world's finished. You ever experienced that? Maybe not, because you're not like it, but sometimes it kind of feel like that. You've done something wrong, and it's like, oh, everything's doom and gloom now. And then you do the right path of rectification, and then it all changes again. You have got the forgiveness. So those were the kind of negative sides of things, and the more positive side of things is we can do very quickly. We've got 15 minutes to finish. From Nectar of Instruction, the expert on Nectar of Instruction is the Tokshaja. That was his study book for a long time. So if you could quote verse 5. So in there, it's talking about Asat Sangha Tyag, isn't it? Giving up association of worldly minded persons. Is that right? I probably can't read my own writing then. Yeah, so giving up the association of worldly minded persons. And in next introduction, verse 6, I think it's right this time, Sato Vrite, following the footsteps of previous acharyas. And in Bhagavatam 3:23-55, see if we can find that verse. 3:23-55. It's run away. Then basically we're talking about association of saintly persons, taking on the association of sadhus, devotees. Is that it up there? Can someone read it? So if we take the association of a particular person, even without trying, sometimes we'll be influenced by. Take the association, we just happen to be sharing some space, but we don't let our mind become affected by that. But we value the association of devotees, and we take the influence of that. And even when we're associating with the non-devotees, sometimes we try to look for opportunities, create some good impression upon them. So avoiding offences, this is what we're talking about here, by good association and by giving up bad association. Also to identify the enemy, the different types of aparad. So if we don't know what is aparad, then how can we avoid it? So we need to know what are the aparads. Just kind of dialing back a bit, is that if we don't know what the aparads are, we may be committing them, and we're labouring with the name, we're labouring with our service association, and we're thinking, oh, this process is not working, I don't believe in it anymore, or it's just exaggeration, and the offences compound. So we have to practice it properly, diligently, and then we'll see the results more clearly. So we can learn what are these things to be avoided, what are the things to be absorbed in, and look out for any inclination that we have towards these things and check ourselves. What's that saying? Check yourself before you wreck yourself. And this is very important. Remember, devotees are special despite apparent faults. So to avoid offending devotees, remember that they're not just persons. And learn to identify as a devotee, learn the devotion of life. So identifying the devotee means Jnana Pisane Chena. This is how a devotee is supposed to behave. Lord Chaitanya is saying, this is what a devotee is. What's a devotee? A devotee is someone who's more tolerant than the tree, more humble than the blade of grass, ready to give respect to others, not expecting respect for ourselves. So in such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, which means there's no impediment, there's no drawing up, no losing of waste. And also another thing which helps us to avoid is to remember where we came from. You know, before we became a devotee, don't become so puffed that now I know 3 slokas and I've been chanting 16 hours for 2 weeks. Then I can start, putting myself in a certain category where they fit in the hierarchy here. This is a mundane way of thinking. So remember where we came from, but not so much, that we go back to it. Or not so much that we become so deflated because we're absorbed in our own faults. But it should be a case of that it is by the mercy of Guru and Krishna that I'm here. And Srila Prabhupada, he was such an example. He wouldn't take credit, even though he was due so much credit, he wouldn't take it. There's an offence called Maryada Vyatikrama. Is anyone familiar with this one? Maryada Vyatikrama. It means to take credit which is due another, especially if it's due another devotee. So we should always be trying to give the credit to others. Like, I'm only the product of my Guru's mercy. I'm only the product of the Vaishnava's mercy. And we might say that a bit kind of superficially to begin with, but if we want to keep that up, then we'll mean it in due course. So, how do we rectify if we have committed some offence, or we think that we have committed some offence? How do we rectify that? Everybody hear that? Yeah. So glorify the same devotee we may have blasphemed, we can glorify him. And anything else? What would you do if you thought you'd offended somebody? Confess to the person. Reveal your mind. And yeah, because the last thing your mind wants you to do is to reveal it, especially if you've been thinking some nonsense. The last thing your mind wants you to do is to grass it up. But if you do that, then the mind's got nowhere to hide. We're doing a great service to the mind. Something else? Adhikavi, you were going to say something? Don't repeat. I just said that though. Yeah, don't. Yeah. Don't hold a grudge. And if someone offends you, don't hold a grudge. Otherwise, someone offends you, you may be an offender as well. You have to accept the devotee's forgiveness, request for forgiveness. But at the same time, bear in mind that if someone is repeatedly, like I was saying, if someone's repeatedly making some offence, then we may have to say, okay, they keep doing this offence and they keep sorry, but they're not changing, so maybe I have to just act in such a way as to help them become a little bit more serious. Like Lord Chaitanya says, oh, your case is not so simple, Madai. And it was over. Yeah, it was bad etiquette. You shouldn't go and criticise another wife's husband to her. Just like you wouldn't go and criticise the spiritual master of another devotee to him. It was bad. It's wrong to do that. And she tolerated it, and then, oh, forgive me, sorry, I did that again, okay. And then she says, forgive me, she's not forgiving you, you've done it too many times. And then she started to think, and then she changed her behaviour, and then she said, I forgive you. So she was thinking for the person's benefit, that was always the thing. It wasn't that, okay, I'm going to stick the boot into you now. She was thinking, it was always remaining a well-wisher. So this is the mood that we should be in. We should be the well-wisher. But also we shouldn't be thinking that I'm the one who gets offended and I don't want to offend anybody. We shouldn't be thinking like that. The Vaishnava is opposite, is that everyone else is devotee, but I'm just fortunate to be in the association of devotees. Maybe someday I'll also become a devotee by their association. So this is, I will just finish with the Maryada Vyatikrama. So the conversation, it was a class or talk Prabhupada was giving after Vyasa Puja. Devotees were having Vyasa Puja for Srila Prabhupada and they were glorifying him. But Prabhupada wouldn't take any glorification for himself. He was truly humble. He was passing it on to his Guru Maharaj and to his disciples. He said, all this glorification you're giving me, he says, this was due my spiritual master. And they said, and it wasn't until the fag end of my life that I did something about it. So he wasn't thinking, I'm such a great person, just see what I've done. I've opened 108 temples, printed 80 books, thousands of disciples. He wasn't thinking like that. He was thinking that it wasn't until the end of my life, practically, that I did something. And then he's saying, my spiritual master, he sent all you nice boys and girls here to help fulfill this order. So this way, he didn't take any credit for himself. So if we try to adopt that mentality as well, is that no one is an island, right? We can't do devotional service on our own. We need association devotees. And even sometimes we don't get the help we need to the extent we need, but still, the association devotee doing some service, even if externally things don't appear to be perfect. That's an important thing. And giving credit to those, giving credit where it's due, and not always being on the hunt to be given credit. Otherwise, we develop this side arrogance, conceit, and then that can be breeding ground. So cleansing the heart by chanting, have enthusiastic mood of service, try to do service nicely, try to do it right, skipping, not cutting corners, doing it nicely. Whenever you plant a seed, then as soon as it starts to sprout, you think, okay, it's coming up now, let's just protect it, make sure that any sun comes, get them out, keep it away from the weather, etc. So we have to do the same with our Bhakti-lata beach, give it protection. And any time there's any weed there, anything which is detrimental to the growth of that Bhakti-lata beach, then we have to uproot that. And if we're not sure, then we seek association, guidance from other devotees who we trust will give us the right direction. So we'll just stop there if anyone's got any comments or questions. Yes, Prabhu.
I mean, sometimes it's still okay if we don't commit the opposites to whatever you do. But it's very difficult to don't commit opposites to our family members.
Well, this is good. Yeah, a very good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Family members may also extend to like devotees living in the temple. We're like one big family and we become more familiar, right? Familiarity breeds contempt, isn't it? We think, first when we meet the devotees, we think, they're great, they're amazing, they're out of this world. And then after some time, they're not that brilliant, actually. And then after some time, it's like, not him again, not her again. I wish they wouldn't come to the temple. Or I wish this one would go to another temple or something like that. Or why don't they just like curl up and die? So these are the Vaisnava Apradhas we're just listing. And but why is that? Because it's an inconvenience for us. It's just I, me, and mine, isn't it? In fact, with Thakur, his mood was he serves his family. He sees them as devotees. That's why he didn't leave home when he was speaking like this, because he's seen them all as devotees. So if we have that vision that these are all Krishna's devotees, I have to be careful how I associate with them, even if they don't see like that. We have to see like that. But if we're all thinking like that, then that's when it works. Yeah, so this familiarity is a very dangerous platform to be in. But it is difficult. No doubt it's difficult. And we will make mistakes, but we keep on going forward. In the family life, especially ashram, that everyone's a servant of Krishna and we're serving as devotees. family members of devotees. I hope my mother's not watching this. You there, Teresa? But sometimes when I go to visit my mother, then she is, she's not young. She's 88, so she has a certain kind of mentality brought up in the background that she was, big family, brought up during the war in Glasgow, and valuing, certain values, etc. And she was brought up in her own religion, etc. She's very favourable. But sometimes when I go to visit her, she just drives me mad. and I'm the whole time I'm just thinking, I just have to remember, she brought me into this world, and she taught me how to walk, how to eat, how to talk. I wouldn't be doing any of these things without that. And we have to show. Lord Chaitanya, he showed this example of worshipping his mother, offering obeisances. So when we think like that, we appreciate, then it can override whatever critical things coming in your mind. So to look at the good qualities, and thanking it up, because it is an exercise we can do, which I was hoping to do. I don't know if we're going to manage it now, but we can do it in future meetings. As there was one devotee and myself who we used to drive this big bus in Sankirtan. Sometimes it'd be like more than 15 people in the bus, and we'd drop them off in different areas. So in Sankirtan, I was the driver, another boy was like the backup driver, and we were just sitting there criticising everybody on the bus. We practically statically go, oh yeah, this one's like this, and this one's like that. And then this verse, Paramdrisva Nivartate, came into my mind. I was thinking, I'm not getting a higher taste here, and I feel like I'm getting a lower taste. I'm relishing, eating stool, of criticising the Vaishnavas. They're on the bus, going out to distribute books. They're making a conscious surrender to fulfil the order of their spiritual master and Lord Chaitanya. And I'm sitting here thinking I've got something to say about them. And then, so I thought, well, okay, the science of Krishna consciousness, you're supposed to glorify the devotees. So we played a game where we chose each person who was on the bus, who would just criticise, we picked their name, said something good about them, and then he'd say something good, I'd say something good. And went through everybody in the bus, and by the time we finished, like the whole world had changed. It's like they say, uplift yourself, change the world. So the world was full of faults and gloom and doom because we'd made it like that. But we changed the world. It became effulgent. When we got back to the temple, everything was effulgent. It was like, when we left the temple, it was like we were in the material world, but when we came back, we were in the spiritual world, and realised that it's always like that. It's just our mood. And so the point is, try to see the good. And sometimes it's hard because our mind practically do whatever's bothering us at the time, but we have to kind of forcefully apply this sadhana principle of seeing the good. And we shouldn't be like one devotee who kind of said, well, because the bumblebee, they'll find, even in a field of stool, they'll find one nice flower and they'll take nectar from it. But a stool fly, a field of flowers, will find one piece of stool and it'll go to that, right? So we want to be the bumblebee of stool fly. But one cynical devotee says, well, if you're a bumblebee, you'd starve to death around here. In other words, he couldn't see the good in anybody, but that was his problem. So we have to practice that, seeing the good in people, even if someone offends us or someone irritates us or annoys us, frustrates us or whatever, just try to see the good, because then we'll be able to tolerate them more, because we will see the good in them. And then when we see the good in them, we're cultivating the good in ourselves. Yeah. You don't have option. You don't have option because your wife's standing there with a rolling pin. But also we can remember they don't have an option, right? Yeah. And another one is, sometimes when we think we're having to tolerate people, we don't realise that they may actually have a more difficult job to tolerate us. Perhaps we're a more difficult person to tolerate than we think they are. And then when you realise that, you think, actually, they've got the tough job. If you met yourself walking down the street, would you be pleased to meet yourself? Or would you be embarrassed? Or would you end up fighting with yourself? Who do you think you are? You've got such an ego. So these, they're not just tricks, actually, they're practices, to see the good in others. With management, perhaps you have to see with one good eye and one bad eye. But if you don't have that responsibility of management, then just take the opportunity to see with two good eyes. Okay, shall we stop there? Any final questions? Yes. Yes.
Because when there are two men in a place, there will be some misunderstanding. Just in line with that question, so how do we differentiate whether I'm finding fault, whether I'm observing?
Then you can share your thoughts to another devotee who you trust will give you the correct understanding if you can't figure it out yourself. That's why we need association of devotees of different categories. Sometimes someone will come to you and they'll ask something, and then even if you don't know it, you're going to have to think, okay, I've got to be the older devotee here and to find the right answer. Or sometimes you're sharing with someone equal. Or if you come across a problem like that and you're not sure of the situation, that instance, then you would go to another devotee and ask them. But if you're going to make a mistake, then better to make the safe mistake, erring on the caution side of things. The Prabhupada also, sometimes he wouldn't, just because devotees had a problem with each other, he wouldn't just separate them. Sometimes there was an example where the devotees were complaining they couldn't work with each other, and he said, that is your austerity. And I know a couple of devotees who used to live in a motorhome together, and they were like chalk and cheese. And they had a hard time getting on, but they had appreciation for each other's surrender. And years after that, when they stopped living together, then they still have that lasting appreciation for each other because they've seen the surrender they were making. So this is it. Sometimes you may go through so much difficulty, but it's worth that difficulty because then you can appreciate them for their surrender, the difference of opinion. But if we come to understand that unity and diversity, the unity is that we're all trying to serve Guru and Krishna. The diversity is that one person wants to serve Krishna by giving him slippers, and one wants to give Krishna his pipe. Of course, Krishna doesn't smoke a pipe. If he does, then it's up to him. Nobody can fault him. But the example was given that father, sometimes he comes home from work, and the children are fighting over how best to get the father's attention and please him. And the father's pleased with both of them. Sometimes we think, well, how can you be pleased with that one? But they may be thinking about us, how can you be pleased with that one? So everybody acts according to their own nature. What can repression accomplish? We can't change everybody's nature to be like us. We have to remember that as well. Is that okay for now? Okay. It's going to be in the key. Srila Prabhupada ki. Shishikundai Mahaprashanj ki. Vaishnava Seva Vaishnava Sangha ki. Haribol Premanande.
Haribol. In this case, Prabhupada Prana Prabhu ki.